This is episode 3 of Dranger Mike Podcast. Today, I want to talk about giving a shit and the importance of giving a shit, not giving a shit, and carefully choosing what we give a shit about and what we don't give a shit about. Because sometimes when you give a shit about something, it requires you to not give a shit about other things. I'm sure a lot of you have heard the saying, if you say yes to one thing, you say no to everything else. But before we get too deep into the topic, a quick message from our sponsor. The sponsor of this episode is me, Mike. You see, Mike has a regular job, or a labor job, and when he gets paid, he pays his bills, gives money to the tax man, and sets aside a little bit of his money to make podcast episodes like this possible. Buying gear, feeding this fat sweaty mongoloid you see in front of you, and making sure that the software needed to edit and run a podcast like this can be paid for on time. So if you want to support our podcast sponsor, head on to Cash App or Dranger Mike on any of the socials and drangermike.com, and you'll see that he has all kinds of links that you can go to. You can watch his videos on Pornhub. Most of them are just him hiking, but whatever tickles your fancy. He is also on OnlyFans and Fansly. Those accounts are also free. And in the next coming week or so, he's going to put videos up on Patreon as well, once he makes some exclusive videos. But for now, all of those platforms are free. But a subscribe or a follow may help with his algorithm magic. So, enough with our stupid. Let's move on to the topic at hand. Giving a shit, or giving a fuck, some might say, or giving a damn. Now, this sounds like it could be related to carelessness or being apathetic towards things that matter, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. What I mean when I say giving a shit is prioritizing things in our mind, prioritizing our time, what we spend our energy on. That is what giving a shit is about. You see, when you have a goal in mind, or you have a pain that is bothering you, there are steps you need to take in order to achieve that goal or rid yourself of that pain. So let's start with goals, okay? And I'm just going to go with an example. Let's say your goal is to put on muscle and reduce your body fat, or a body recomposition. You want to go from mole to swole. Now, if you give a shit about that, that mandates you to give a shit about things like diet, exercise consistency, and proper time management and education related to the things that will get you those goals. This goal being getting swole, you need to learn how to lift weights properly. So, our first thing to give a shit about is quality of information. Where do you get the information that you're going to use to learn how to lift properly? Now, there are plenty of books out there, and you will have to weed through them on your own. I have a couple of recommendations, and I will give them to you in a minute. But this is just an example. So you start watching content on YouTube, for example, and in some videos, someone is showing you how to do squats and deadlifts properly. But what comes up on your recommended feed is someone doing hack squats or weighted dips or keg tosses. And something like those keg tosses looks super fun. But guess what? Those are advanced exercises, and those are for explosiveness, and they don't give you progress towards your goal of getting swole until you've already established a baseline of strength. So we take our give a shit meter and we put a little mark next to keg tosses for now that says, I don't give a shit about keg tosses. Okay? You want to squat, bench, deadlift, curl, military press, overhead press, dumbbell fly. You want to stick to your basics, right? You want to get your strength up and you want to get those muscles engorged. You want to get the pump. You want to breathe hard and you want to do some cardio. You want to get the muscles swole. You want to reduce your body fat so you can get some veins popping. So you need to stick to the basics. And in order to stay disciplined at sticking to the basics, you need to stop giving a shit about all the other fun things in that category of weightlifting that aren't going to get you there the fastest. The next part of this is, for example, only diet. Now, I love to eat, as you can tell. I like to eat ice cream. I like pizza. I love a big fat meatloaf, a steak, lasagna, pretty much any kind of pasta, honestly. I can mess up some Alfredo so goddamn fast it'll make your head spin. My own grandmother used to ask me, where do you store all that? Do you have a hollow leg? Where does the food go? I still don't fucking know, Grandma. But if my goal is to get swole, and I'm trying to shred down a little bit, get rid of some of that extra body fat, well, guess what? All the shit that tastes good, it's out the fucking window. We have to put pizza on the I don't give a shit list, because the I do give a shit list is already taken up by things like red ruminant meats, right? Red ruminant meats, full of vitamins and minerals, lots of protein and fat to keep you balanced. You also want white meats like chicken. You want, of course, dark meat chicken, obviously, as well. You want thighs and breasts and legs and wings. You want all of that. You want fish, salmon, tuna, tilapia, if you're that desperate, whatever tickles your fancy in that give a shit category. You can't give a shit about ice cream anymore. Not for a little while. Okay? Because you don't want your blood sugar going up and down. That is a not give a shit thing. So dump the shits that you have for ice cream just for now. Okay? And focus on the give a shits. Your goals. If you want to pound some veg, pound some veg. If you like spinach, broccoli, kale, any of those other garden decorations, go ahead and eat those too. Because they're not super high in sugar. They're not going to spike your insulin and cause you to put on fat. But I'm sure a couple of them, like sweet potatoes, they have some carbs in them that'll bring your insulin up enough for you to, have your muscle building reaction, your protein synthesis and your growth hormone triggers and all that, whatever you need. I'm not trying to get too much into the science of it, but the standard bodybuilder diet. is like chicken and broccoli and rice and fish. So stick to those. Stick to what's simple. And mix it up a little bit. If you do give a shit about variety, you can still give a shit about variety. But you'll be choosing from a different menu, right? Your menu will no longer be, am I going to go to Wingstop or Chick-fil-A? Ooh, you know what sounds good? Five Guys. Have you ever tried In-N-Out? Oh, you got to come to the West Coast. In-N-Out's the greatest. What about Whataburger? No. Simple Whole Foods. Those are your give-a-shits. All right, we talked about this. Stick to your give-a-shits. Now, let's say you've been doing your 5x5s in the gym, knocking down your protein with no problem. You got your chickens, you got your fish. You're starting to get used to that. You bring meals with you because you've prepared them, because you gave a shit. And then, let's say the boys hit you up to go out drinking. Guess what? If you want to keep your progress going, you need to stop giving a shit about a couple of things. You can still go out, but don't go too crazy. I know a lot of people who give a shit about going out and getting absolutely fucked up. They'll get super drunk, they'll smoke a blunt, and then they'll eat a whole bunch. Don't do that if it's not going to help you. All right? So go out with the boys. Maybe stick to a couple of shots of hard liquor. Do your thing. Play some pool, whatever. Play some darts. Get you an Uber home. And eat one of the meals that are at home. All right? Don't drink a bunch of beers and get fucked up. Just drink some shots. You want your reward to input ratio to go higher. All right? And I don't believe alcohol is a reward, but if you like it and you want to go out with the boys and you need to go out with the boys, you have to tailor that to something that doesn't interrupt your goal too much. So that is the stuff related to weightlifting, getting shredded. That's a good starting point to remember. Make a list of things that you need to give a shit about and give a shit about them. And then make a list of things that you don't need to give a shit about and stop giving a shit about them. You might lose a couple of friends over it. But if your goal is truly worth it, then honestly, when it really comes down to brass tacks and they go, you'll realize that you actually didn't give that much of a shit all along. Those are fair weather friends. You know, friends that only like you when you're hurting yourself are not really friends. It may seem like it, but if they don't have your back, even when you're trying to do something difficult and good, then I don't know. In my opinion, that's not a friend. And there are plenty of bros in the gym or sisters in the gym that you can make friends with who are on the same path as you. So we've covered what to give a shit about in relation to this goal and who to give a shit about in relation to this goal. Of course, we have family obligations and things like that, so do take care of those. But most of the time, those don't get in the way. Those make life a little better. A way to think about this that I've learned is to think about video games. See, in a video game, you have series of quests and goals and side quests and things like that. And you'll notice with games like Skyrim or Destiny or Halo or any of those, when you do a hard mission and once you succeed, you get your reward, usually your reward is like gold or tokens or some sort of currency that's in game, but also you'll get some sort of gear. And most of the time, especially say it's a legendary gear of some kind, or like something enchanted or some shit, what the fuck ever, it doesn't matter. Most of the time, that item or that group of items that you receive are items that you can use in future missions. They bring up your stats. So you've been given a shit about the right things and not given a shit about just the right things as well. You've been working hard. You start to achieve little bits of goals. Let's say you lost 10 pounds of body fat and you put on 4 pounds of muscle. Now, you want to reward yourself, right? But guess what? Eating ice cream in large quantities or going out and having pizza and beer with the boys or with the family or whatever to celebrate your weight loss or whatever it is, if you're trying to celebrate something that you've worked hard for, don't celebrate it with something that's going to hold you back, that's going to back up your progress a little bit. You want to keep that progress going, right? So you want to reward yourself with like a legendary item of sorts. Say you've achieved your minus 10 pounds plus 4 pounds muscle goal, and it's come time to reward yourself. You've saved up some money or something. Guess what? Get a barbell or something. Like a nice new custom barbell or something with the really sharp knurlings on it. Right? When you grab it, you feel like a fucking Jedi. Right? Because it can't turn in your hands or nothing. It's gripped. You're in there. Your deadlift is going to go up 40 pounds just from the roughness on that knurl. Knurling? Whatever. The rough fucking bar. Okay? Brand new, crisp, clean, rough bar. That's a reward. Because that helps you go farther. It helps you move faster. It helps you get stronger. If your goal is to run a marathon and you've got yourself up to like a 10K or something, guess what? Your reward should not be goddamn lasagna and trivia night. It's not going to help you. It's going to hurt you and it's going to bring down your progress. So turn your give a shits on and use those give a shits to get yourself a reward that pushes you forward, that helps you achieve more faster or easier. Get a pull-up bar. If you drive to work kind of far, say you live in like Stockton, but you work in San Francisco, and you're doing a commute that's, I don't know the distance, 45 minutes an hour. Let that reward apply to something like that. Perhaps a couple of outfits for work. Say like a new suit or some work boots, plus maybe an upgrade on your car. Something to make your car go a little bit faster or make it a little more fuel efficient. Or something that'll help you save money on gas, maybe? I don't know what the reward is. But you have to find a reward that helps you, that pushes you forward, that makes your stuff easier. Perhaps it's an alarm clock that gets you out of bed easier. Say it's louder and you put it all the way across the room so you have to get up out of bed. Now your drive to work, you're awake and refreshed. Whatever the goddamn thing is. If you're a wood carver, reward yourself with some chisels, man. And sharpen those babies. I know you've been using a couple of chisels that are too narrow to widen the little gaps in between your dovetails, or if you're doing Japanese joinery, you want a nice wide slick chisel that's gonna just go whoop and plane that bitch right off there for you. You want a nice flat surface, right? That will upgrade your woodworking. It will make the quality of your work higher, and it'll make it probably faster. Say a router, right? Or what if, here's the deal. What if your hobby is Dungeons and Dragons? And that's what you're trying to improve. You're trying to make that experience cooler. And I mean, starting from where you are, how much cooler can it fucking get? You can create an entire world and the dungeon master throws you all kinds of trouble. Or if you are a dungeon master, your reward for yourself, get a new dungeon master journal. Get a whole bunch of new dice, right? Not a bunch of snacks to sit around the table. Not something that's going to take up a bunch of your time trying to fix so that you won't have enough time to do your Dungeons and Dragons night. Get a robe. Get a goddamn wizard's robe and a staff. That would be cool as fuck, and it would help you become the best dungeon master you can be. Do you play basketball? Get a new net. Maybe one of those chain ones. I don't know what the difference is, but I know that the swish from a net and the swish from a chain, I think I like the chain better personally. But if you have a preference one way or the other, and the net you use is not the one you prefer, get the one you prefer. Get a better ball. Get some better basketball shoes. Get your KDs on. Get something that pushes your progress forward. Make life like a video game. Because in all honesty, it is. There is a selection menu every time it comes time to reward yourself or make a decision during a tough challenge. So put your give a shits in the right place. Now, let's talk about relationships. You see, some people give a shit more about availability than they do about quality of interaction or honesty, integrity. And what ends up happening is that person becomes super clingy. Nobody likes that shit, except for other damaged people. So, if you're struggling with your partner in some way, let's say, for example, communication is shit, right? Neither of you feels heard. You tend to hurt each other with the words you say when you get upset. Maybe one of you can't, for some reason, walk away from an argument long enough to calm down before coming back. So they just hold you there and keep bickering. Or, as soon as something gets uncomfortable, they dip. There's two ends of that spectrum. You're stuck there, or you can't keep your partner in the house to talk to you long enough. This is where the give a shits kick in. You see, if someone tortures you with terrible relationship skills, terrible communication skills, and you don't give a shit about it, and you start to get miserable, you start to not give a shit about the relationship altogether. After a while, you kind of just check out. I know in my experience, I've seen a lot of people who are already mentally out the door when they're still in a relationship. And I see them years later, they're still in the same relationship. They were mentally out the door years ago. So things like that happens because they gave a shit about the wrong things at the wrong time, and they were not willing to just let the give a shits that they have that were unhealthy go. Perhaps you secretly give a shit that your partner doesn't spend enough time with you. Let's say they play video games all day long and they never do any chores. They don't help you out with anything. It's really frustrating. And you give a shit about that, but you don't give a shit enough about communication to figure out what the best way is to communicate that to your partner, to communicate those needs. And then you feel neglected and cold. Neither of you are no longer attracted to each other. Or, he or she's attracted to you, but you're no longer attracted to them. So anytime they try to make a move or initiate some sort of romantic episode, it just feels like It just feels like someone burdening you with it, like they're trying to push it onto you. And I'm not trying to blame you here if this is you either way, either side of this situation. What I'm trying to say is there are steps you can take to give a shit in the right direction that can fix that. You see, that relationship, I bet, was beautiful when it started. It was amazing. That person could do nothing wrong. And you overlooked or completely ignored all kinds of red flags because maybe you're afraid to be alone again. Maybe you thought, oh, I can only win a couple of battles. Pick your battles. I just got to let them have this, or they'll go away. What am I going to do if I'm alone? No, don't do that. If you were to give a shit about the communication, first and foremost, give a shit about honesty and integrity. When a new person, a new partner, when you're freshly in that relationship and you communicate things that upset you without screaming and being upset, but saying, hey, I noticed you did this thing the other day and it kind of bothered me, but I let it go. And then you did it again yesterday. And I thought, oh hell, I hope this doesn't turn into a pattern. You did it again today, and I just wanted to bring it up to you. That thing that you do, that upsets me. And I'm not mad at you now or anything like that. I just want to let you know, I just want to make sure, what's the standard, so that I don't get upset in the future. Is there anything that you're willing to do to adjust? Or is there anything I should keep in mind about this thing that's happening? And most of the time, in the beginning of a relationship, that person still wants to please and impress you. And you want to please and impress them too. So they'll probably work with you. But the communication style is important. And if you gave a shit about communication from the start, and you gave a shit about recognizing the way your partner best communicates, your partner will give a shit about what you have to say. Especially if you communicate it in a way to them that they can receive without having to feel like they're defending themselves. This is both sides of the argument are this way. Is that if communication and honesty and integrity is first and foremost in the relationship, and that you truly give a shit about those, and then you stop giving a shit about feeling dumb or bothering your partner or being embarrassed or something like that, and just let all that shit go. Let those insecurities go. Those insecurities don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a shit about your well-being. So you shouldn't give a shit about those insecurities. Obviously, that's easier said than done. But take some baby steps. Give a little bit of a shit if you can. That's probably my 2 cents, the best I can do, talking about communication in relationships. Other than the fact, if you love somebody, this is a well-established relationship. If you love somebody, it would be in your best interest and your partner's best interest to treat them as if you love them consistently, continuously. Right? So when you are upset, communicate that you are upset without acting upset. Perhaps if I say it like, here's an example. Let's say your partner says something to you like, oh shit, damn, that was stupid, right? And you didn't like it. You have a couple of choices here. You can respond with something like, fuck you, I'm not stupid. Or you can say, hey, that's kind of, that upsets me. Can you please do me a favor and just cool it with the stupid stuff for a minute? I know it might sound dumb, but it upsets me, and I really appreciate it if you wouldn't. It's important to me. You brought that to them in a way that sounds like you actually do give a good shit. You give a good quality shit. Like you give a good morning shit about it. Right? They see that you care, and that you care enough to control yourself when engaging about it. They see that you care about them, that you didn't just blow up on them and treat them badly, even though what they did, intentionally or not, was also treat you badly. How they respond to a good solid response like that is what matters next. See, because if they give a shit, they will respond and listen in kind to the way that you listened and responded to them. Especially if it was healthy. If you did some sort of healthy communication. If they give a shit about you and about how you feel about it and about how they make you feel, they'll respond in a good way. Or maybe they'll be confused and they'll like prod and ask a little bit more. I want some, can you, what do you mean? Or maybe they'll defend themselves just a little bit, like, I didn't mean to say it like that. I don't think you're stupid. No, I just thought that thing was funny. It was like, you're clumsy sometimes, and I love that. That's a pretty good response. But you lash out, say, I'm not stupid, fuck you. All of a sudden, they have to defend themselves. They're like, Jesus Christ, where'd that come from? What crawled up your ass? No, fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you, Tony. Right? So think about that. And that's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to do. It's pretty hard to give a shit about consistent showing of love and respect, even when you're upset. But in most cases, when you give a shit about something that's difficult to do, with enough work and continuously giving a shit, you'll get good at it. And eventually, it won't take up so much of your give a shit's budget. I've no more fucks to give. Seek the garden where I grow my fucks, and see that it is barren. Or, the garden where I grow my fucks is an oasis of peace and tranquility. It's a land of plenty. The land of milk and honey is where I grow my fucks. You see, because there's not all kinds of toxins and chemicals in my fucks. I don't give a fuck about shit that's gonna break me. Why would I give a shit about? I'm not gonna invest my shits in that. That's a shit investment. Invest my shits in bullshit? Don't invest your shits in bullshit. I'll tell you, okay. Make giving your shits in the right place versus the wrong place a good trade deal. Don't make it the worst trade deal in the history of trade deals. Don't do that. Nobody likes that. Trust me. Believe me. Everybody knows I don't like that. He doesn't like that. That guy over there. You guy. See, he doesn't like that either. Don't make bad investments with your shit, with your fucks, with your shits and giggles. Just let go. And that's very hard. It's very hard to do. So you have to give a shit in order to let them go. It's like a transaction fee, honestly. Now, another thing a lot of people give a shit about where they shouldn't is the way other people see them. People give too much of a shit about their reputation in the eyes of others, the others' opinions of them. And this can be important. You know, say, like, for example, I live in a pretty small town. So, you know, there's not too many people that I can bump into in the grocery store that I'll never see again. I'll see them again. And so I choose to invest in those relationships when I can and to treat people well. And some people know I don't give a shit. If you step on my foot at the bar, why am I even at the bar to begin with anyway? But you step on my foot somewhere, I don't give a shit. My shoes are made to protect my feet. My feet are safe. I'm not hurt. Don't worry about it, man. Or you accidentally scratch the paint on my car with something. Accidentally, so like not with something, like you used an implement to scratch my car. But say you're riding a bike or something, like you're riding your kids down the street with the bike, and then like one of the kids bumps into the car. It's not a big deal. I mean, sure, look, the paint doesn't look as good after it's been hit by a particularly daredevilish 8-year-old. But the car still drives the same. When you get out of your house and you walk around to the driver's side, you get in, shut the door real quick, and then start driving to work, you've only had to look at your car for, I don't know, 8 seconds or less. So why are small incidents like that something you should give a shit about? I honestly don't believe they are. Now, I mean, sometimes, you know, the car's a lease. Maybe you should give a shit then. But that also doesn't mean to stop giving a shit about your self-control, right? So, in an interaction like that, you can come out and calmly say, "Oh, that's unfortunate, but hey, this car's a lease. Is there anything you can do to help me figure this out?" Right? Instead of, "You need to watch where your fucking kid's riding his bike." Then you got a parent who gives a shit about their kid. They give a million shits about their kid. They don't give a single fuck about you. Now you have a problem with one of your neighbors. When calm, cool, and collected, the right give a shit investor comes along and communicates effectively. "Oh yeah, no, that's not too big a deal, but is there any way you can help me? Whatever. This is a lease, you know, yada, yada, yada." And if they say, "Oh yes, I'll do what I can," appreciate what they can do. And if they say, "Oh no, go fuck yourself," so, "Oh, okay. Go fuck myself, right?" Well, guess what? It's still just paint on a car. So you might want to just go fuck yourself. Because let's say you stop giving a shit about self-control again. And you walk over to Timmy's dad over there, bonk him in the head. Now, one of three things happens. The third being very, very unlikely. The first thing that's going to happen is maybe Timmy's dad was a bouncer or something, or an ex-MMA fighter or some shit, and he just knocks your ass into the dirt. You gave a shit about the wrong thing, and now you're going to be giving a shit about all the pain you're in for the next coming month. Oh, sure, he might go to jail. Or sure, you might, second option, beat his ass. And now you go to jail. And of course, the third option is you smack the guy in the head and he whimpers and cowers away and then goes off and you never hear about it again. That rarely happens. You know why? Because people give a shit about their own pride. And they will make bad investments just to spite you. They will tank your stock. They will short your stock of give a shits. They will short the stock on everything you care about. They will sue you. They will beat you. They might have a cousin come shoot you. I don't know. Depends what town you're in. Right? All because you chose to give a shit about your pride instead of giving a shit about what matters. Am I still on track to make my goal? Right? So little Timmy scratching your car. And I've been harping on this for a little too long. Him scratching on your car does not change how effective that car drives. You drive that car to go to work. You go there and you work and you make your money and you fucking come home and you eat your pre-prepared meals. You do your push-ups, you do your sit-ups, you do your pull-ups and squats and dips, whatever you have to do. You do your shit and it's moving you forward. You reward yourself by buying yourself a new pair of fucking sneakers. You practice on the basketball court. You make your Dungeon Master wizard robe exquisite. You're a fucking mage. You're a mage in all of these scenarios. Even if you're just a bodybuilder, you're a mage. You're making meat. You're making man meat out of muscle. You're picking up heavy shit and all of a sudden you're just getting bigger. You turn chicken into human. You think about that? You eat chicken and then you shit out some of it, but a portion of it becomes you. That's crazy. Ever since you were a baby, you are just a collection of things you've picked up off the ground. Isn't that fucking crazy? Give a shit about that. Give a shit about that progress. Give a shit about who you were and who you've become and who you're going to become. Right? You were a baby. And you would crawl around and you'd bump your head into shit. And then mommy would give you snackies. And then you would eat snackies. And then a couple of months later, you're like 5 pounds heavier. Your bones are starting to come in. They hurt a little bit. You're still flexible. You start to sprout up like a bean. All because of you put stuff in here, in your mouth, and you get bigger. Give a shit about that. Give a shit about all of the work you've done in the past. So that when you achieve your video game style quest, or one of those side quests or subcategory quests that gets you in that direction, give a shit about past you enough for all the work that they did to get you to where you are now. Even if now you're at your lowest point, you had to do so much to survive this long. Don't fuck it up by choosing a bad reward deal. Choose a reward deal that pushes you forward. Because in the past, all of your ancestors from day one were pushing forward. And for them, it was fucking slow. You know, I worked for probably like 3 months total, and paid my bills or whatever, and some of the excess money I would save up and put aside, or I'd use a little credit here or whatever, a little loan there, back and forth, whatever. I worked for like 2 or 3 months, and I bought a computer that I can't even begin to understand. I bought a couple of screens for that computer that confused the fuck out of me. They make pictures with light and signals that go through copper wires. But they make pictures that I can take with the camera that reads light somehow through some magic and spits energy through wires into the computer, and the computer displays pictures. That's how we're talking right now. That's how I'm talking to you right now. I don't understand a single one of these fucking mechanisms. I know there's like a little ribbon of foil in my microphone, and that's about it. The camera like has a lens with some whatever. I don't know about the camera. I know there's some glass there, and I know there's an LED. I know LED stands for light emitting diode. I don't know what that diode's made of. I know that Cree LEDs are more powerful than standard LEDs. I don't know what's in Cree LEDs either. I don't know what's in the screen. I don't know what's in, right? So that was a bit of a ramble, but I purchased all of this stuff in a very short time span. So my investment on this shit was not super high. So my give a shit level would not be as high as it would be for people in past generations. I put together a desk that took me 30 minutes, 45 minutes. This desk you see here, I bought it on Amazon for like $175. I didn't have to make a single part of this desk. So what I have out of all of this stuff, I didn't have to give a shit about the process and procedure to make all of these things real. This board that they use like compressed sawdust and glue to make, and then they put a veneer. We don't have to give a shit about this stuff because someone else did, like at the same time as us. But we should give a shit about all the work our ancestors did to bring us to this point. Sure, some of our ancestors were slaveholders and fucking assholes. But, I mean, that's not where we're at now. So, maybe we should give a shit about fixing the results of that, the lasting effects of those things. But maybe we shouldn't give a shit about the stupid pleasures that we chase that were not even available 20 years ago. Perhaps if we gave a shit about what our ancestors gave a shit about, like family, if we gave a shit about working well with the land, learning how to farm, learning how to have a lasting marriage, learning how to raise children, learning how to build furniture, whatever it is. Like, those are some like high give a shit topics for people, because there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of investment there. And I am grateful to the people that made this microphone. So I give a shit that I don't get in their way. I have a smartphone that's batteries are powered by like lithium and cobalt and stuff like that are mined by children and people who work like slaves for almost slave-like wages. So my phone is built by slaves. Pretty much. It's not built by people that have the same privilege as I do. So, when I take pleasure in a resource like that, perhaps it's important that I give a shit to make the most of it. Because the phone is already made, the desk has been built, the computers are already running, and the people that put them together, well, the people that put my computer together, put the parts together, I'm sure they were paid okay because it was made in America. But those computer parts were made in other parts of the world where people suffer enough, they don't have time to give a shit about stupid things. They give a shit about their next meal. They give a shit that their kids go to school so that they can live a better life than they had to. They give a shit that twice a week the power goes out, sometimes more than 5-6 hours at a time, and it ruins all the food in their freezer if they have a freezer. They give a shit about different things. They give a shit about things I don't have to give a shit about because someone else gives a shit for me. So the next part of giving a shit is gratitude. Live your life with gratitude and give a shit about being grateful for the things that you do have, even if what you want is still not within your grasp. We all die. And some of us die way too soon. They don't even have the opportunities to give shits as much shits as we give. So I think it's important to give a shit about your time and to give a shit about being grateful and giving back. Because this is another interesting thing about a lot of video games, especially MMORPGs, massive multiplayer online role-playing games, is when the character gets to a particularly high level. Lots of times they can choose to run around and pwn, but you'll find after a while a character usually that's been at the highest, the maxed out level for, I don't know, like a year or something, however long they've been playing, if it's a long time, hopefully. What they'll do is they'll drop legendary gear for other players, especially like if they're in an area that's surrounded by noobs. You know, they'll come by, and sometimes I'll see when I used to play World of Warcraft, and they would pick me up. They'd be like, "Hey, come with me on this dungeon," and just kind of stay towards the back. I'll smash everything. Just make sure you shoot a couple arrows or something like that, so you can get some hit points and get some experience, and it'll help level you up. Right? So they spent so much time and they gave a shit about their development in the game and got to a point where they don't have to give too many shits anymore. So they decided to give back. They gave a shit about the new players. And it's always super cool because for nerds like me in video games where a high level player comes along and like drops some loot or says, "Hey, it's like seeing a celebrity." You're like, "Oh my God, this guy could fucking pwn me with one hit." Right? So make sure to give a shit when you get there. When you've done gave a shit about all your goals. When you've done gave a shit about staying true to the path, staying on the war path. You gave a shit about your diet, your job, your hobby, your passion. You gave a shit about your reading list and you've read it. Now you're full of information, you're full of opportunity, you're full of power. Make sure to share that power and spread it to those who are giving a shit beneath you. People who are starting their journey. They show initiative in giving the shit about the right things. Help them out a little. Give a shit about them and they'll give a shit about you. When they get to a good point where they can become a resource for you, you guys can give a shit about each other and move forward faster. I think I've said give a shit probably 1,000,000 times now. So I think I've made my point. Where we care matters. Things that upset us oftentimes shouldn't. Things we reward ourselves with hurts us. Things we choose to spend our time doing because of emotional imbalance. We are upset, we are sad, we are lonely. We feel depressed. Not the same as clinical depression. but we currently feel depressed. Are we giving our shits in the right places? Are we putting our energy into things that are hurting us or helping us? It is rarely neutral. Barely ever neutral. So, next time you're in traffic and someone cuts you off, next time someone steps on your foot but you're not hurt, next time a waitress forgets your beverage, waiter, waitress, next time waitstaff forgets your beverage, next time you have to call customer service because some item stopped working right. Perhaps your toaster started flinging the toast across the room instead of just popping it up a little bit. Maybe your ice maker went out. Pause for a minute. Like really pause. Breathe a couple of times and think, is this something that I should give a shit about? Should I care about this? How much energy should I invest in resolving this or achieving this or consuming this? Is it worth the time? Is it worth the stress? Is it worth ruminating over? Sometimes it is. But most of the time it isn't. It usually is the small things that upset us the most, actually. Most of the time we don't know why, but I think if we give a shit about digging deep, if we put our energy into caring about understanding ourselves, and we care about how others treat us, or how we treat others, how we build relationships, if we care about those things, and we put our energy into those things, the time we spend caring about minor inconveniences will go down. If your spouse loves you dearly, and you both communicate with each other very clearly and kindly, what are the chances that you're going to be pushed over the edge from some small, stupid inconvenience? How many plates will you throw across the room if, I don't know, they accidentally didn't put spices on your dinner or something? Something very minor. Forgot to get milk at the grocery store. Are you going to freak out if you are constantly in love with each other and in good communication? I don't think so. I don't think you should give a shit about things like that. That's my main point. I spent, I don't know, probably about an hour saying give a shit. No. No thank you. None of this for you. No ice cream. But guess what? Every now and then, after you've put in some work and rewarded yourself with something that pushes you forward, that helps you achieve more, you could put some energy into a little bit of ice cream. An ice cream cone is wonderful. A bowl of ice cream, just as wonderful. Maybe just a little bit more. But, you know, you care about your progress, and you want to have a little treat that is not like your major like goal reward, maybe you can care enough to be modest with it, to treat yourself with moderation, and let your big rewards be the ones that push you forward. And you know what this is? This is very different from what I was talking about in the beginning of this episode. You see, because you were strict with yourself, you've established some discipline along the way. And now, if you want to have a little bit of ice cream, you can have a little bit of ice cream. Or maybe some Jocko milk. Jocko says that it is just like ice cream, but better. You put it in the freezer, or do it Tulsi Gabbard style or whatever with like a frozen banana. Or how Echo does it. I don't know if you guys are fans of the Jocko podcast, but you should be. It is excellent. And it is terrifying and heartbreaking sometimes. So that's a little podcast recommendation for something to care about, something to give a shit about, and put a little bit of time into, perhaps while you're driving at work, or if you work a labor job where you don't need to talk to people very often. Put some headphones in, listen to this podcast, listen to Duncan Trussell. He's lovely. Listen to Jocko. Give a shit about the entertainment you use. Give a shit about the quality of information you get. Someone who really gives a shit is Dr. Andrew Huberman, who runs the Huberman Lab podcast, I believe. Or is it the Andrew Huberman podcast? I don't know. Lots of great information. Great information about pausing, standing up and stepping back, looking around the room. Jocko also says the same thing, but he learned that with his knuckle dragger ways. Huberman learned it with neuroscience. But, you want to move yourself from fight or flight into rest and digest. Be peaceful so you can make better decisions about what you're going to give a shit about. Ultimately, after this discipline has been established, you'll have tons of stability and peace of mind. The people around you will know and understand that your priorities are in good order, and that if you're doing something that seems out of character, perhaps there's a good reason for it, and they know to ask you, and that you will give them an honest answer. Because ultimately, the path that you take is up to you. Where you put your shits, what you choose to give a shit about, it's all up to you. Even when it doesn't feel like it. Self-control, self-motivation, self-guidance, self-discipline. Probably that's within self-control, but self-discipline is really about doing things, and self-control is about not doing things, certain things. So, follow the path. Go to drangermike.com for all my socials. I'm on Facebook, the page Dranger Mike, DRENGR Mike. I'm on YouTube, Dranger Mike, Instagram, Dranger Mike, TikTok, you guessed it, Dranger Mike. I got the same same username everywhere. I am on Pornhub, OnlyFans, and Fansly, also as Dranger Mike. Up there, I've only posted a hiking video so far. It is nothing sexual. I just thought it would be funny to post wholesome content in an unwholesome place. While watching my serene hiking videos on Pornhub, you will be immersed. Walking through the trees, going up hills, hearing my fat ass breathe hard. And then every now and then you'll back your head up a little bit. You look over to the right or left and you'll see some ad for like a big dick pills or something. Or like some lady getting like screwed in the butt. And I think that's fucking hilarious. I think it's absolutely hilarious. You watch one of these to fall asleep and then autoplay is on, right? So there's not much sound, or maybe it's just a video of me talking while hiking. And then it changes. The next video comes on and it's like a gangbang. And you just hear, oh, yeah, oh, in the fucking... You're like, what the fuck is this? Right? Someone, maybe wife comes in and, what are you watching? Oh, no, I swear I was watching a hiking video. So that's kind of why I do that. To put a little bit of chaos in there. Because Drinker Mike is full of passion and love and understanding, kindness. But I'm also a little bit of a shitster. And I hope I can come up with some crazy, chaotic things that people will enjoy. Or things at least that will get them into a little bit of trouble and put them in a funny situation. So check out my socials. Check out my Pornhub. Check out my YouTube. Look at all that shit. It's not particularly acrobatic. I am no athlete. I can't rap. I don't sing. I'm a little bit dyslexic, so I don't read super fast. I don't even talk fast, honestly. If you've got to this point in the podcast, perhaps you deserve an ice cream cone. So go ahead and get one and then go do 40 push-ups to make up for it and get on the fucking path. Give a shit. Start giving a shit about the right things. Stop giving a shit about things that you shouldn't give a shit about. When life gets hard, pause for a second and think, is this something I should give a shit about or not? And make the decision and follow through. That's all for today. This has been episode 3 of the Drinker Mike podcast. And if you watched to the end, you're my fucking hero.